In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about COHO's Tenant Find panel. The Tenant Find panel in COHO allows you to send pre-qualification questionnaires to prospective tenants, invite to viewings, see your available properties on COHO's Find a Home tenant marketplace, add leads, and we'll take a look at the Tenant Find settings cog for setting up viewing hours, setting up pre-qualification questionnaires, and adding your Rightmove credentials. The first thing that we're going to cover is how to navigate to the Tenant Find panel. So you do have a Tenant Find panel that sits on your main portfolio page. There is also a Tenant Find panel that sits on the property page, and there is also a Tenant Find panel that sits at room level. Now, the Tenant Find panel that sits at property and room level is different to the main organisation Tenant Find panel. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the Tenant Find panel that sits on your main organisation page or the main portfolio page. So using the side menu at the side, I'm going to select the Tenant Find panel, and it is going to navigate down the page for me and open that panel up. So what we're looking at here is, like I said, it's on the main portfolio page. So we can clearly see that we've got Tenant Find at the top, we've got our settings cog at the side. We've got a blue invite to viewing button, which I'm going to cover very, very shortly. And then we have 4 subcategories. So the first category that we've got here is pre-qualification. I've just clicked on pre-qualification, and as you can see, that expands further to awaiting answers, answered pre-qualifications, and also pre-qualifications that have been sent and that have gone stale, and this is typically after 7 days of no response. The next category is arranging. So we've got proposal dates required, awaiting confirmation, and then we've also got scheduled, which is viewings that have been scheduled for today, viewings that are scheduled for tomorrow, and scheduled in the future. So again, this is after 7 days. And then post-viewing, we've got awaiting feedback, we've got approval required, successful, and unsuccessful. So these will be pushed along the viewing workflow by yourselves or by the tenants. And typically, as is the case with everything else in COHO, anything that is yellow or this orangey colour is waiting for somebody else, which will be the tenant, to do something on their side. Anything that is red or amber is waiting for the manager to actually do something on their side. We've got some filtering at the top, so good idea to pay attention to the all or mine and unassigned. I know a lot of people have it defaulted to mine and unassigned. If you do find that you aren't finding somebody in the Tenant Find panel, it could well be that you need to change your settings to all. We've also got the ability to tag again at the bottom there. You can also select by property, so if we want to just find a particular property and what is going on in that property in relation to Tenant Find, we can use that filter there. And we've also got a search function, so if we want to put in a tenant's name, we can start to type them and it will also find that particular tenant. Now, if at any point during the Tenant Find or the viewing process you archive a tenant, you can of course toggle on the show archived only. So now you'll notice that it looks very, very different. These are 2 tenants that we've started the viewing process, but it's not carried on for whatever reason that might be. So we've actually archived that particular tenant. We can also download CSV as well. So if you want to pull out a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet with all of your viewings on that sheet, you can of course click the download CSV. At the bottom, we've got 2 more sections. So the first section here is availabilities. So if you've got an availability, an empty room, an empty property that's sitting on your portfolio, you can clearly see the availabilities in this section here. Now, you may well have turned on COHO's Find a Home tenant marketplace, which is part of your subscription. It does mean that you will probably get some inquiries through COHO directly, inquiring about rooms and availabilities. So if you do want to see all of those viewings, you can actually click on the view button here, which will load up another page for you, and you will be able to see all of your availabilities that are listed on COHO's Find a Home tenant marketplace. Of course, down the bottom, we can search by a particular property, or we can search by name as well. And at the bottom, we've got what is available and what is unavailable. And as you can see, there are none available on this account, and we have 5 that are unavailable. At the bottom here, we've got the leads section. So if you have connected your Rightmove account to COHO, this is going to be where all of your leads fall into. You can also manually add your leads as well. And as you can see, we can see new leads, any that are in progress, and again, any that have gone stale. What we're now going to do is invite to a viewing. So I've navigated to the Tenant Find panel on my main portfolio page, and I'm going to click the invite to viewing button there at the side. Now, the first thing that I need to do is actually select a property. Now, all of the properties in this portfolio happen to be occupied. So I'm actually going to uncheck the available only to be able to actually see all of the properties that are on the portfolio. So I'm going to go with 22 Hawthorne Rise. I've picked this one because it's an HMO, so it is giving me all of the rooms as well. If you are looking at a single let, then obviously you will not have the room option, but you will still have the property option. So I'm going to go with room A, and I'm going to click continue. Now, there are some required fields. Forename and email address are required. The rest of them are optional. However, I will highlight that the mobile phone number field there will obviously be sending out SMS messages for reminders for the tenant that you're putting in prior to the viewing taking place. So I'm going to enter some basic information. Now I can also record the source as well, so where this particular tenant has come from. So that might be Rightmove, Spare Room, any marketing platform that you do actually use. I'm going to enter Rightmove, and I'm going to click continue. So now it's given me some other options. I've still got the property address. I've got all the information that I've just entered in about the particular tenant. Now I can propose a date straight away, or I can leave it for later. I'm actually going to go with the leave for later option deliberately, because I want to send a pre-qualification form out to this prospective tenant before I actually commit to going out to the property and doing a viewing with them. So I'm going to click continue. We've got here the default pre-qualification questionnaire called Basic Viewing. Now, the reason that this is here is because via the settings cog, I have already set up a pre-qualification questionnaire and made it so that it is applicable for this particular property, 22 Hawthorne Rise. If you just set up a pre-qualification questionnaire and don't say which properties it is in relation to, I will actually get a drop-down box to choose which pre-qualification questionnaire that I want to send out to them. So from here, I could, of course, click don't use a default this time, and then it brings me back to the send pre-qualification form, yes or no. So if I do go for yes, I get some more options here. I can either use an existing one that I've created via the settings cog ahead of time, or I can actually create a new one. I'm going to use an existing one just for now, because I will be going into the settings cog a little bit later on to show you how you can set up the pre-qualifications ahead of time. So I'm going to use existing. And now all of my existing pre-qualifications that I've set up are listed for me. Now what you will see is there is some subtitles here, or subheadings. So the one that I've created within Tenant Find is called a basic viewing. It is also listing the onboarding application forms that I've set up in the onboarding as well. So you could, of course, use one of those if you wanted to. I'm going to go with the basic viewing one that I've created here on Tenant Find though. And it now lists all of the questions that I have put in on that pre-qualification questionnaire. So it is a very basic one, like I said, and I'm going to click continue. Now the next option that I get is the assignee. So the conversation for this viewing will also be assigned to the particular team member that I'm actually going to select here. So I'm going to select David at the top there, because if the prospective tenant wants to have a bit of a conversation with me prior to the viewing or anything to do with the pre-qualification questionnaire, I want all those messages to be automatically assigned to me and not assigned to anybody else that also is a user on my COHO account here. So I'm going to click continue, and I can of course put in a message that says, "Hi Claire, can you complete the form and send it back to me? Thanks." So really basic, and yeah, a little bit of a message to go over to the tenant alongside the pre-qualification form here. So I'm going to click send. And now if we look at the pre-qualification stage, you'll notice that that went from a 2 to a 3. And as you can see here, I have 1 in the awaiting answer, which is for this particular tenant that I have just sent the pre-qualification form out to. Now, what I can do from here is I can archive it, which I said at the beginning, and using that toggle, I can show archived only. If I do click view though, I can see all of the information that has already happened about this viewing. So I've got the full name, email address, telephone number, and the lead source. And it says that Claire has been sent an email and an SMS with the following link to manage the viewing as well. I've got that conversation. I can see that no viewing date has been proposed yet. And I've got a box here that I can actually do lots of different things for. So I can complete the application form on behalf of the tenant. Maybe I'm with them at the office, or I've already asked them the relevant information over the phone, so I can, as the manager, complete it for them. I can, of course, skip the questionnaire completely. I can propose a date. I can cancel or reschedule. I can resend the invite as well if this particular tenant has not received any links through to their email. I can switch to another room. So if I've accidentally selected room A and I meant room B, for example, I can make that change. And I can also switch to another property. And then also right at the end here, I've got the onboard button. So I might want to skip everything completely and just move this particular prospective tenant straight up into the onboarding workflow and just go through the onboarding process with them there. All of these options, regardless of where you are in the Tenant Find workflow, will be available to you at every single stage. At the side here as well, I've got the history tab, which is really useful. So I can see everything that has already happened here. So the viewing was assigned to me as David. The questionnaire has been added as well, added to viewing by the manager. And I can also see that Claire was invited to a viewing. I can also add any more notes in here as well, and they will be date and time stamped with the particular user that put the notes in. If I click on the conversation tab, you can see that there's that message that I sent over to them, and the prospective tenant will also be able to contribute to that conversation. Now, as the tenant, I have just received an email. There is a button to click in that email called See Details, or I can copy and paste the URL straight into my browser, and it is bringing me directly to this page. So as you can see at the side here, I've got the conversation list. In the center here, I've got that message that the manager sent over to me initially, and I can begin to complete the form. And then over on the right hand side here, I've got more details. So I can see there is a viewing of room A, and Perfectly Prepared Properties are looking to go through the viewing process with me. I can look at the details. I can look at the participants as well, and I can also click straight through to the Tenant Find side and be able to see all of the photographs, the floor plans, and any other details that the manager has actually entered onto their side. Now, it is important to note at this point that if you are taking a prospective tenant through the Tenant Find process, they do not need to create an account on COHO at this point. However, as you can see at the top here, they can if they want to. They can click claim account and go through the registration process to actually create an account on the system. It's also important to note that if you are moving them from the Tenant Find panel and you are going to take them through a full onboarding, they do need to claim the account at that point. So what I'm going to do now is complete my pre-qualification questionnaire. So I'm going to check that the details here are correct. I'm also going to choose my date of birth. I'm also going to choose my gender. As you can see, that date of birth and gender are both optional, and check that my email and my phone number is correct. Going to click next. So questionnaire, do I have any pets? Nope. Is the room for a couple or friends sharing? No. And do I need parking? I'm going to say yes. Going to click next. And then at the end of the questionnaire, obviously, like I said, this is a very, very basic one, and I will be covering what you can add to the questionnaires in a little bit more detail later on. So right down at the bottom of the questionnaire, I need to declare that the information that I've provided is true and accurate and contains no misrepresentations. So I'm going to checkbox that, and I'm going to click save. So now that is all completed. I've done my pre-qualification questionnaire. I'm now going to be waiting for the manager to review that questionnaire and to see if this viewing is going to go on any further. And of course, at the bottom here, I can say, hi there, that has now been completed. And I can actually send that message back to the manager. So I'm back on the manager side now, back at the Tenant Find panel, and I can see on the pre-qualification that one has been answered, which is for the tenant that we've just seen. So as you can see here, I've got my assigned to me when it was created, who it is and the property address. And if I click view again, I can expand all of the details. So at the bottom here, as we can see, I can review the questionnaire. Again, I've got more information at the side because I can now see that the applicant has completed the questionnaire. And again, if I go to the conversation, I can see that little message that I sent back over to the manager. So from here, I can review the questionnaire. So all of that information is going to expand below. So forename, surname, email, phone number again, date of birth and the gender. And then all of the information there that was pre-filled in by the prospective tenant, and then the declaration. So at the bottom now, I've got a few options. I can either accept that this pre-qualification questionnaire is perfectly acceptable and go on to invite them to a viewing. I can also request more information. So for example, if they have said yes to pets, for example, and I want to know exactly what that pet is, I might want some more information, or I can cancel it completely. In this scenario, I'm going to click accept and click submit. So at the top now, you can see that that has been reduced down to 2 on the pre-qualification, and we're now actually moving along, as you can see, to the arranging side. So I can now see that the proposal date required is needed. So I need to enter a date that I'd like to go out to the property and do a viewing with this particular tenant. So again, I can click view, and at the bottom here, I can still see the completed pre-qualification form if I want to just have a double check. At the side, again, now I can see that the manager has accepted the questionnaire, so all of that is being automatically logged at the side, and I can now propose a date. So I'm going to choose Thursday, and we're going to go for 10 o'clock in the morning, and the viewing duration is going to be 30 minutes. At the bottom, I've got a few other options. So I can set a default duration for all viewings by setting it in the viewing hours settings. So that is done on the Tenant Find settings cog, which sits on the top right hand corner there. And again, I'm going to be going into that a little bit more detail later on. I can also say that the date has already been agreed upon. So if I have spoken to the tenant or I've got them in the office, for example, I can actually say that yes, that date has already been agreed and it's going to happen. I'm going to leave it unchecked though, because I want to go over to the tenant side and show what it looks like when they need to accept a date. And I can also choose to meet at the property. If I uncheck that, I do get a field that I can fill in with a meeting point. That might be, again, at the office or somewhere else. So I'm going to meet at the property and I'm going to click send. So as we can see now, it's falling into the arranging and I'm awaiting confirmation. So it is now waiting for the tenant to confirm that Thursday at 10 AM is acceptable on their side, and then we can push the viewing forward even further. So I'm now back on the tenant dashboard. I've received an email that says that my pre-qualification was accepted, and I've also got an email to tell me that a date has been proposed for the viewing. And I can click on the links in those emails and it is going to bring me through to my dashboard here. So at the side now, what I can see is I can accept the date and time. So I can see that the viewing date has been set for the 3rd of April at 10 o'clock and it is for 30-minute duration and I'm to meet directly at the property. As the tenant, of course, I can, or prospective tenant, I can reject the date and propose a new one. So if 10 o'clock's no good, I want to go for 10:30, something like that, I can, of course, reject that date and propose a new one. Or, of course, if I have found another property elsewhere and actually I don't want to do a viewing on the property at all, I can cancel the viewing. In this scenario, I am going to accept the date and time. And as you can see, there's a little notification here that says I'm accepting the viewing date. You're accepting a viewing on April the 3rd at 10 AM and I'm going to be asked to confirm my attendance 24 hours and 2 hours beforehand. This will obviously get you away as managers of not going out to the property and finding that there is nobody there to go and do the viewing with. So yeah, we will send them a notification by email and SMS 24 hours before the viewing and again at 2 hours before the viewing, and they'll be asked to confirm their attendance. So I can click confirm from here, and now that is all set up. So as we can see at the side, it is scheduled in 2 days. I can still click on those links in my emails to get the information over here, and I can still send the manager a message if I need to. And again, I can cancel the viewing if I've found another property in the room in the meantime. So I'm back on the manager dashboard now, and this particular tenant has moved to scheduled. It's not today and it's not tomorrow, but it is in the future because it is beyond tomorrow, like I said. I've got all of my details here, and again, I can click view and expand all of those information. Again, I've got my history on the side. So I can modify the viewing date, meeting point and the duration at this point still. I can still cancel, can resend invites, switch rooms, switch properties, and again, move this straight up into a full onboarding. So for the sake of this demonstration, I'm actually going to modify the viewing and bring it forward. I'm going to pretend that I have spoken to the prospective tenant and they've got 30 minutes on their hands and I'm around the corner from the property and they're actually really keen to go out, see the room, because they are keen to move in if it is suitable for them. So I'm going to click modify the viewing. I'm going to change the date to today. And I'm actually going to put in 11 AM and I'm going to keep all of the information exactly as it is. And I'm going to send that over to the tenant. So if we look at the Tenant Find panel now that I've modified that date, we can see that it is awaiting confirmation. So I'm now waiting for the prospective tenant to actually have a look at that proposed date and accept it on their end. So back on the prospective tenant side, I can now see that a new viewing date and time has been proposed to me. So again, I've got those options, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm accepting a viewing on April the 1st at 11 o'clock, and I'm going to confirm that time. And now everything has updated, and I've got a few additional options at the bottom there. So as a prospective tenant, we're now imagining that I've been out to the property as the manager, I've been out to the property as the tenant, I've viewed the property. Now what needs to happen is the feedback. So the feedback is a two-way street. The prospective tenant needs to provide feedback that they are happy with the property and they need to indicate that they're okay to move in. And also on the manager side, you also need to indicate that you're happy for the prospective tenant to also move into the property. If both parties are happy, it can then obviously go on to a full onboarding. So as the prospective tenant, I'm going to provide some feedback here. So do I want to move forward with the viewing? I can say, yes, I'd like to move in. No, I don't want to move in. Or I can actually indicate that the manager was a no-show. So nobody answered the door for me. I'm going to indicate that, yes, I'm happy to move in. And now it is accepted. I'm now waiting for the manager to provide their feedback. So back on the manager side now, looking at this prospective tenant, I've got my history at the side there. So the new date was accepted. We've gone ahead, we've done the viewing, and the applicant has indicated that they would like to move in. So like I said, the feedback is a two-way street. The applicant has indicated they want to move in. You as the manager also need to provide your feedback. So providing the feedback here, it's very similar to the tenant side. So I can say, yes, I would like this person to move in. No, I do not want the person to move in. Or I can indicate that the tenant or prospective tenant was also a no-show. I'm going to say yes and send that feedback over. So as we can see now, everything has been approved. So we've approved the pre-qualification questionnaire, we've gone ahead and we've done a viewing. Everybody has provided their feedback, everybody is happy, and as we can see now, we can literally just move this from Tenant Find into doing a full onboarding. If you didn't attend the webinar a couple of weeks ago on our onboarding, you will find the onboarding webinar video recorded and uploaded to our YouTube. So if you do want to see what a full onboarding process looks like in COHO, you can go ahead and look at that video on our YouTube channel. So that is the full tenant find or viewing process from start to finish, sending out a pre-qualification, going through arranging a viewing, what is scheduled, and then of course the post-viewing stage where you need to provide feedback, and then from there can move your prospective tenant into a full onboarding. So just to cover the last two sections down at the bottom here, like I mentioned right at the beginning, you've got an Availabilities tab. So you can click that to expand, see all of the availabilities, so empty properties, empty rooms that you do have on your account. And you can also click the view button there to see all of the property availabilities that can be found on your public profile, which is COHO's Find a Home Tenant Marketplace. You can use the property details and room details panels to put in your photographs, floor plans, descriptions, amenities, lots and lots of information that you can put on there. So to help prospective tenants browsing, they'll be able to look at all of that information and inquire through COHO's Tenant Find Marketplace, which will actually pull those prospective leads into your Tenant Find panel. So like I said, it's part of your subscription. You can turn it off. I'm going to cover how you turn it off if you do not want to market your rooms on COHO's Tenant Find Marketplace. I will be covering that very shortly. If we now look at the leads section, if you have connected your Rightmove account directly to COHO, your leads will pull into the leads section here, and you will be able to still send them pre-qualifications, go through the arranging, schedules, and post-viewing stages. You can also manually add your leads as well. So if you haven't connected a Rightmove account to COHO, you're getting your leads or inquiries through other means or other platforms, you can actually click add leads and enter all of the information in there. As you can see, you've got a property selector. This is very similar to what we've seen right at the beginning. You can put in first name and email address. These are compulsory mandatory fields. You can enter their surname, phone numbers. You can also record the source, so where they have come from, like spare room. And you can also add some notes in as well. So these will stay in the lead section until you actively send them a pre-qualification questionnaire, or you do invite them to a viewing, and then they will move up into the main Tenant Find workflow at the top. What we're going to cover now is the Tenant Find settings cog. The Tenant Find settings cog on your main organisational page is very different to the Tenant Find settings cog that you will see at property level. I'm going to be covering both just to make you very aware of what differences are between the two. So the first settings cog that we're going to be taking a look at is on the main portfolio page. So I've got my settings cog at the corner there. I'm going to click this, and as you can see, I've got a pop-out window that will open with various sections within it, and we're going to be going through each section. So the first section that we've got is viewing hours. So the viewing process that we've just taken a look at was very simply us as the manager proposing a date and a time, and the tenant or prospective tenant confirmed that that date and time was okay. What you can do is set up or define your business as usual parameters that will constrain when an applicant may propose a viewing. So as you know from looking at the prospective tenant side, I could, as a tenant or prospective tenant, put in a date and a time that was okay for me. So if you have set up your viewing hours, tenants or prospective tenants will be able to see what those are and pick a slot accordingly, which can be really, really useful. You have defined when you're able to go and do a viewing, you're leaving it for them to be able to choose what time fits in with their schedule. So on the viewing hours here, we can set up the viewing hours. So the first field that we've got there is to be able to default the viewing duration. So it's set to 30 minutes, but if you need less, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, or maybe a little bit longer, you can of course change that field. Now at the bottom here, this one is particularly useful. So there is a checkbox here to automatically alert active tenants. So these are your current tenants that are sitting in a property. If you've got an HMO, for example, you might need to always notify that to your current tenants that somebody is going to be coming out to the property and doing a viewing on a room. So by checkboxing the automatically alert active tenants, it will automatically send an individual email with the viewing details, which will be the room, the date and the time, to each active tenant in the property 24 hours before the agreed viewing time. If the agreed viewing time is less than 24 hours, then that email is going to be sent immediately. So that gets you away from needing to send messages out or emails out to alert those current tenants that somebody is going to be coming out to the property to do a viewing. Now also down below the automatic alerts, we've got a minimum number of days before and the maximum number of days in advance. So if you're setting up your viewing hours here, you might not want short notice and you may not want too many days ahead in the future. So you can define how many days before and how many days, maximum days in advance, people are able to book a viewing with you. And then down at the bottom, we've very simply got our Monday to Sunday, where we can put in a time range that we're actually available to go and do a viewing. So I always think that starting at the bottom is quite a nice thing to do. We can make ourselves completely unavailable on Sundays and Saturdays. Don't want to be going and doing viewings at the weekend, but you might do if you need to. We can also then say that we are available on a Monday between 10 and 12. And if I put in a time range there, I can also click the plus box there. So from here, I can actually then pick it back up to being 1 till 3 in the afternoon. So I might want an hour to go away and have some lunch there. And as you can see, I can get rid of that if I don't want it. I can also put in another time range on the same day as well. So from here, I can click save and say I'm not available on Saturdays and Sundays, and I'm only available to do a viewing between 10 and 12 and then 1 and 3 on a Monday. And yeah, you can go ahead and put in these date and time ranges and make yourself unavailable. So the next section that we're looking at now on the Tenant Find settings cog is the pre-qualification forms. So as you saw at the beginning, I sent out that very basic viewing form that was available to me because I'd already created it and set it up ahead of time. So if I click add form, if anybody is familiar with how the application forms look like on the onboarding, then this is going to be very familiar to you because it is exactly the same fields. So the first thing that I do need to do is name my pre-qualification form. That is going to help me identify it when I come to choose it and send it out to a prospective tenant. We've got mandatory questions. These are automatically default checked by COHO. We will automatically ask their first name, surname, email and phone number, so you do not need to worry about those. And then if we scroll down, we've got further optional questions. We've got some questions about their history, so whether they've ever been made bankrupt, if they've got any CCJs or a criminal record. And then we've also got some employment detail questions down at the bottom. So I definitely recommend dropping into the settings cog on your main portfolio page and having a look at those fields and setting those pre-qualification forms up ahead of time. It's going to save you more time than doing it on the fly. Then down at the bottom, we can also add additional questions. You can ask as many additional questions as you need to. As you saw with the pre-qualification questionnaire that I got sent, it asked me if I needed parking, if I'd got any pets, for example, and that is where these additional questions will be asked. I can also add any additional files. So maybe if I wanted to include a map of the area or a map of where to meet at the property, that might be a really good use of adding an additional file in. And then at the bottom, I can simply click create. Now, right down at the bottom, we've got the Rightmove credentials. So we've recently got an integration with Rightmove, which anybody that is inquiring about any of your properties on Rightmove, that lead is going to automatically pull through into COHO. So if you have got a Rightmove account, you can request your credentials and create a Rightmove account over on Rightmove. You do need to email them to get your credentials, so the email address is there. So I would definitely recommend checking out Rightmove over on their website. And then if you have got a Rightmove account, you can of course come into the settings cog on the Tenant Find main portfolio page and connect your Rightmove account directly to COHO. There is a button down at the bottom here to add new, which will give you the relevant fields that you need. So the name, the network ID and the branch ID, which will be provided to you. So I've just dropped into 22 Hawthorne Rise. I've clicked into the property and I've navigated down to the Tenant Find panel that sits on the property page. There is a couple of extra buttons at the bottom here. So copy viewing form link. That will create a viewing form link that I can send out to any prospective tenants so that they can then come back into COHO's Find a Home tenant marketplace and have a look at those photographs, the descriptions and floor plans, and go through the process of inquiring about the property or the room directly through COHO. I can also edit the property profile as well. So if we click on this, you will see that it's actually opened up the property details panel. I can, of course, scroll right down to the bottom or navigate to the property details panel directly at the bottom of the page as well. So this is where I can enter what the area is, what the rental type is. I can put in my headline description describing the property. I can also add photographs. I can say what type of property it is, if it's furnished, council tax band, all of the amenities that are in the property, whether pets are allowed, whether smoking is allowed, if I've got a preference on tenant type, a preference on gender, preference on age range. I can also make changes to the minimum and maximum terms of renting and if bills are included. Some of these fields are automatically asked when you initially put the property on in the very first place of coming over to COHO and adding that property on. So if you do need to make any changes to any of that information, you can do it from the Tenant Find panel, or you can just head straight down to the property details panel and make any changes there. So looking at the Tenant Find settings cog that is on your main property page, not the main organizational page. Like I said at the beginning, the Tenant Find settings cog is different on the main org page. That is where you can set up your viewing hours, you can set up pre-qualification questionnaires and connect your account to Rightmove. It is very different at property level. So clicking on the cog here at property level, we can, of course, hide this property on COHO's Find a Home tenant marketplace. So if you do not want to use COHO to advertise your properties and get inquiries that way, of course, you can turn that off. It is part of your subscription. It's part of your subscription, so an extra little bit of marketing. But if you're not happy to do that, then of course you can hide the property on COHO. You can also hide the housemate's information. Now, it is very basic information that is shared about your housemates that are in the property on those listings, and also the tenants, when they create their account, they're able to also opt out of showing that information as well. But like I said, it is very basic information. It's their first name, it's also their age range and their occupation. So very limited information. So if you do want to hide the housemate's information on your public listing, of course you can toggle that on as well. And of course, I will always mention the saving options down at the bottom. So we have hidden this property on Find a Home. We've hidden the housemate's information on the public listing. If we click save, it's only going to save that configuration on the property that we happen to be in, or we can save it for all properties across the whole portfolio. So that concludes the webinar on COHO's Tenant Find. Hope that was really useful. You should definitely be using it to invite your tenants to viewings and setting up pre-qualifications. And of course, if you have a Rightmove account, definitely look at adding your credentials via the settings cog on your main portfolio page. And if you haven't got a Rightmove account, then head over to Rightmove, create an account with them, and then of course you can come into that settings cog and add your credentials there. Thank you very much.